Good day. Thank you for tuning into this 2016 General Election Candidate Forum for Legislative District 35, Position 1. The forum is presented by the League of Women Voters of Thurston County and TCTV. The League is a nonprofit organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in their government. The League neither supports nor opposes candidates or parties. We are nonpartisan. The League registers new voters, studies issues, and advocates for its positions with the legislature. Now, despite its name, the League is open to both men and women of voting age. I'm Mary Moore from the League, and I'll be moderating this forum. The candidates for Legislative District 35, Position 1 are Irene Bowling and Dan Griffey. For this forum, the candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then I'll ask them questions in alternating order. The person first asked the question will have 2 minutes for response, followed by 1 minute from the other candidate. There will be 1 minute for closing statements at the end. We'll begin with an opening statement from candidate Irene Bowling.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you for the time to share my thoughts with all of you. My name is Irene Bowling. I'm running for State House of Representatives, Position 1 in the 35th Legislative District, which is quite large. It goes from practically Silverdale, Washington, all the way down to Grand Mound. I'm running because I believe we need to have some real change in Olympia. I have quite a bit of experience working with people from all different walks of life. I've been a teacher for 40 years, and I've been a small business owner for 36 years. I'm a mother of 3 children, and I've been very involved in civic affairs in my community, in Kitsap County in particular, for the last 40 years. I also am a lifelong resident of the 35th Legislative District. My parents met at PSNS, worked at the shipyard. I have uncles that were loggers, and I feel very comfortable, and I love the area that we live in a lot. So I'm very pleased to be here and to share my views with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan?
Good evening. My name is Dan Griffey, State Representative from the 35th District. I just completed my freshman term in the legislature. A little bit about myself is I'm a lifelong resident of the 35th District, over 46 years there now. I'm a professional firefighter by trade. My service in Olympia means a lot to me. It was a job I was tailor-made for. Service above self is what we're taught in the fire service, and it was very easy to translate that service into service in Olympia. I have worked on quite a few bills since I've been in Olympia. I'm focused primarily on private property development rights and your ability to develop your property without onerous regulatory burdens on you, the owner of the property, from government. I'm working very hard on that in my local government committee, and we just had a very good hearing on that, and I'm hoping that we will get some actionable items out that and make some real changes for the district. This district was a timber district. It was one that had some of the lowest unemployment figures in the rural districts in the 70s and 80s. We had some kind of ridiculous legislation that put the timber industry out of business. The district has not recovered from that, and I'm going to work on that private property rights and the economic development so our sons and daughters can stay in the 35th District and continue what we started. Thank you so much.
All right, now are you ready for the questions?
Let's go.
All right. So since Irene got to go first with her introductory statement, how about you going first with your first question?
That'll be fine.
All right, Dan. And then you can follow up. You have 2 minutes to answer this question. Irene, you can follow up with 1-minute response. This is the first question. The State Environmental Policy Act, commonly known as SEPA, is a large and complicated law involving several state and local agencies. Are there any changes you would make to this policy?
Right. Absolutely. So just when I first got elected, I had 2 fictitious businesses that I started just for the purposes of finding out how the SEPA reporting and documentation went, what it would look like for local businesses. Right now, number one, they ask if you have adequate parking, and they check and see if you have adequate parking. Then the next thing they check is if you have enough room for the business. All too often, there would be exceptions granted for a Seattle business to be started, and not an exception for us in the 35th District. I think that one size fits all is not working. We need to change those SEPA reporting requirements so it respects the fact that the rural districts have to have an equal playing field. I think I lost my sound, did I? Anyway, so an equal playing field with Seattle and King County, and I'll be working on that legislative fix for in this cycle in Olympia. Thank you.
Irene, would you like to respond?
The 35th Legislative District, the economy of it depends a great deal on the waterways. And we need to protect our waterways, especially the Hood Canal, from ocean acidification, which is getting dangerously high. I know that the tribes are very concerned about all kinds of pollutions that are going into the Hood Canal. I think the GMA and different growth restrictions can be looked at, but I think that we have to keep our water quality in particular very, very guarded and clean. Otherwise, it's going to impact not only the forestry business, but the fishing business, tourism, and just our overall why we all live in the 35th, which is the great beauty and the love that we have for our district. So I'm very concerned about any adjustments to SEPA, and I would have to look at that very carefully. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Now you get the next question. You'll have 2 minutes. Dan can respond with 1. This question is as follows. It is absolutely clear that the state lacks the revenue to comply with the Supreme Court's ruling on basic education without shorting other vital services. What would you do to solve our revenue problem?
This is probably the most paramount and most important question that the legislature will have this next session. And this is a very important question, and I will do my best to try to answer it. There is a committee right now that is working on some alternatives to finding additional revenue and changing some things. There's also a levy swap proposal that might be of benefit, especially to the 35th, that would bring more monies into the rural district like the 35th Legislative District that I would definitely consider. However, I do not feel a levy swap is the permanent solution to the problem. Ever since the recession, we've had billions of dollars that have disappeared out of our revenue system and that has affected education. The first thing that we should do is close the tax exemptions and loopholes. I, in fact, brought a list with me that we have over $1 billion right here on this list in front of me that would help tremendously if we could take action. And the House Democrats have proposed this, and it has been killed. And I think that this is something that we need to keep attempting to do to try to find a bipartisan solution to gaining access to these funds and be able to fund the schools the way they should be, and especially for the 35th LD, which desperately needs these funds.
Thank you. Dan, would you respond?
Luckily enough, since I've been in the legislature, we've put billions of dollars more money in education. So saying that I would be part of the problem is a little ridiculous. We put a lot of money into that, a little over $4 billion. I think when you look at what the solution we're going to come up with, it's going to be a combination of levy swap. It's going to be a combination of regulatory reform that we will be able to credit the savings back to us. And the third part would be new revenues. Luckily, Washington State's economy is very hot right now. We're bringing in lots of revenue. Just like we did last legislative cycle, we had a little over $4 billion new money. That is, we're projected right now that we'll be able to, with the three of those, I am fairly certain, have enough money to comply with the court's mandates. Thank you.
Without shorting other vital services.
Absolutely.
Okay. Here's your third question. And Dan, you get it first.
Thank you.
Is there anything more that the legislature can do about the coal and oil trains that run through our state?
Absolutely. Studies have shown that if we switch to pipeline delivery methods as far as oil, per 1,000 miles of oil pipeline safely constructed, the leak that we seem to get from that is about 100 gallons per 1,000 miles. On the rail shipping, it is very problematic and very dangerous, and when they derail, we can get thousands of gallons of oil. So I think we need to move to safe oil pipelines. The coal trains, we're working very hard on making sure that the coal is wet down on the top, so you don't have all of the coal dust blowing off and then getting out and contaminating the environment. So I think we're doing a good job. I think on the coal trains we could do a little better job making sure that they have proper covers over the top and that they really aren't injuring the environment. But I think we're doing a really good job making sure that we understand that if we invest in pipelines, safe pipelines, they are very much safer than shipping freight over the rail. Thank you.
Irene?
I would have to respectfully disagree with my fellow seatmate here. I feel that we are not doing enough to ensure the safety of coal. I think that it has very possible dire consequences. If we had one oil spill or one huge coal spill in our Puget Sound area, we could be cleaning that up for years. And I don't think that our economy and our environment can afford to take that risk. I think that these rails have to be very, very carefully looked at, and that we have to have very severe restrictions to examine the risk factor in transporting coal and oil through the Puget Sound area.
Thank you. All right, now it's your turn, Irene, for the next question, and your 2 minutes. At present, the state doesn't have the resources to adequately care for our mentally ill citizens. How do you propose that we start addressing this problem?
Getting back, this ties in even with funding education first, is that if we fund education first without finding out how we're going to get additional revenue, we are not going to, the numbers don't work out from what I can see. We are not going to be able to take care of the mental health problem, and it's a growing problem. 30% of the people incarcerated in our prisons have mental health problems. It used to be in 1980 something like 8%. So we have a tremendous uptick on people that have mental health problems that are either imprisoned or have been incarcerated at some point. We have an increase, as you can see, every day. Just look today in Burlington, people that are attacking innocents. So there's obviously a tremendous need for mental health services, and also for the elderly and for the disenfranchised in our society. So we will save more money in the long run and have a safer society. And I think that's one of the jobs of our legislatures, is to make sure that we have safety above all else. And by funding our mental health program and finding ways to do that, in addition to our education system, is of paramount. Those two things are of paramount importance for our state, especially at this juncture in history.
And what do you think, Dan?
So the problem can be broke up in several areas, probably three. Number one, the amount of people that are going into the mental health profession, getting the training that it takes to be a mental health professional. There's not enough of them at this point in time. So even if we fully funded all the positions, we wouldn't have enough of them. So we're going to have to encourage more of our universities and our technical and community colleges into providing those sort of classes. The other thing is we need to encourage the kids as early as high school into that being a good profession. Number two, it's really hard to discern between mental health and drug problem. And I think that's important to understand is, first of all, I'm working on opening a center in Mason County that would be a primary receiving center. So the first day you're in crisis, when I, as a professional firefighter, find you out there, what do we do with you? Usually we take you to the ED. Well, the best thing that we can do now is take you to somewhere. It looks like my time is up. Thank you so much.
All right, good for you. The next question then will go to you.
Thank you.
And do you think that we have done enough to stem the gun violence in our state, as per, for instance, 1491? If your answer is yes, why? And if no, what more would you do?
I do not support that initiative. I believe the due process rights are eliminated there. When all of us swear oath to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution of both Washington State and the United States of America, we have to uphold the fact that you have to have due process rights. The initiative absolutely takes that and throws it away. So we need to make sure that those rights are protected. I think one thing that we can do, right now, those that have had their constitutional rights taken away by the court system, about 70% of the court system is not reporting that to the background check people. We need to work on that bill. A lot of states have done that to make sure that mandatory reporting of those that can no longer, and they've been through due process, can no longer own a gun. There needs to be 100% reporting. And so we can make sure that those guns don't get into the hands or stay in the hands of somebody that needs to maybe have mental health treatment, that kind of thing. So I think with those two, that'll do. Thank you so much.
Irene?
I am very concerned about gun violence, of course, in our country and within our area. In fact, one of my students lost her entire family a few months ago by the stepfather who killed the entire family. She was the only survivor. So it hit me personally with this family. I agree with Representative Griffey. I feel that we need to have very, very strong background checks for people to own guns, and I think that we need to make sure that our police knows who has them. And in the case of this particular student I'm speaking of, it was unknown that this father had the guns, and he was a convicted felon. So obviously there's a lot of slipping through the cracks on this, and I think that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Very interesting. So the next question, Irene, you get this one. State parks have continued to be underfunded for several years, causing the infrastructure to be unsafe and staff to be laid off. Would you vote for more funding for state parks to solve these problems? And if so, where would the money come from? If not, why not?
I definitely support the state parks. I mean, as a camper and a person that's raised children and taken kids out on field trips, I can't think of a more wonderful way to spend our time here in this beautiful state. I would like to propose that we bring back the Department of Tourism. During the recession, that department was closed down, and I think that especially for the 35th LD, this could be a tremendous boon for us. We have absolutely the most gorgeous, the gateway to the Olympics. We have the Hood Canal. We have all these waterways. 25% of the property in Mason County alone is forested. So we need to take advantage of that. And by expanding the state parks program and by supporting what we already have, I think would be a tremendous advantage, especially for the constituents in the 35th LD.
Dan, what do you think?
That's a very good question. It's quite obvious that the Discover Pass is a failure. It did not raise enough money from user and access fees to do what it was intended to do. A lot of people don't know, but every 2 years when we write the capital budget, we spend billions of dollars on land acquisition. I've been a champion in Olympia to say, instead of us buying all this new land, let's set aside a considerable amount of money in the capital budget for land maintenance. And if we did that, then we would be able to, within existing funds, be able to maintain our park system, hire some more personnel to maintain the parks. But I think that would be a great place to start, is instead of doing all of this land acquisition that we can, without any plan for maintenance, we can start saying that we're going to switch to maintenance in our capital budget. And I think that would be a great funding place, and rightfully so. Thank you.
Oh, good. So now this question is for you, Dan.
Okay.
Do you support a carbon tax, such as outlined in I-732? Why or why not?
I do not support a carbon tax. Washington State is either has the lowest carbon emissions or the second lowest carbon emissions when we change it. Consumers right now are making very good decisions. They're buying new vehicles that have very high fuel economies. Our district is very large, and you have to drive a long distance to get to places that have groceries, whatever you need to purchase. It would disproportionately injure the rural districts. I think that right now, through proper product development and consumers making the conscious decision that they want to save fuel and have higher fuel economies, what we're seeing is that we will meet our standards by 2020 just by consumers buying new vehicles. We do not need to tax our citizens any longer to fix this problem. Let's go back to it. We are the greenest or the second greenest, depending on which policy we change in the nation. We do not need the carbon tax. I will not vote for it. I do not support it. Thank you.
All right, Irene, what about you?
There are actually two proposals in not only the carbon, the I-732, but another one. And I think that both of them have great validity in what they have to offer for trying to not only affect the carbon emissions from our own state, but worldwide. And so I think that we have to think outside of the box here. I don't agree with Mr. Griffey in that it's going to cost the average car person driving. It has really nothing to do with that. It's not going to increase your money going from point A from Allen, Washington to Olympia. It will affect, however, big corporations that are putting tons of carbon into the atmosphere and creating global warming. So I think that I'm not sure that I support I-732 or the other initiative. I think there are flaws in both of them. However, we do have to make a stand at some point, and we do have to address the warming climate. And this is one way of doing it.
Okay, last question, guys. And you get to be the first answer. Mm-hmm. Do you support Initiative 1464, commonly referred to as the Accountability Act? If so, why? And if not, why not?
I think that we always need to be re-examined. And I mean, I'm a small business owner, for instance. And every year when I'm going over the books and I'm trying to find ways that I can save money, or my employees can work a little bit more efficiently, or how are we doing things? I think that all government agencies can become bloated. And I think that we do have an issue in any business, from a school district on up to the state legislature, that we have to be looking very, very carefully at how we're spending our money and using the taxpayers' money absolutely to the best of our ability, because we don't have a lot of money, as we can see, with all these revenue problems to go around. So I support any re-examination and open books so that the taxpayers know exactly what they're paying for. I think this is very, very important for all of us. And it will make people that are in charge of things a lot more careful about how they're spending their money.
Dan, what do you say?
I don't support the initiative, and here's why. What the initiative will limit to just about only one section, one group of people that could donate to political campaigns. I believe that business has an interest and should have an ability to donate in the political campaigns. So I understand and would love to see money out of politics. Goodness knows we have to raise so much money to run for these races, and it'd be great to just doorbell and just mano a mano talk to the voters and say what we're about. This initiative is very flawed. I love the initiative process, but one of the problems with the initiative process is you don't get all the fingerprints on it like you do when legislation passes through Olympia. There's so many changes we can do, so many different backgrounds get to help amend that legislation. This one, I think, was thrown together quite quickly, and it's going to be fraught with difficulty, so no, I don't support it. Thank you.
Now you each have 1 minute to respond or to kind of tell the world why you'd be the very best candidate in the world. So we'll start with ladies first.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if I'd be the best, but I'd certainly be the most passionate. I want to help the people in our district, and I want to help the people in our state, and that's why I'm doing this. It's not that I have to do it, and I'm doing it for all the children that I've taught for the last 40 years. I'm doing it for my own 3 kids that are now college age. I'm doing it for my neighbors, for the elderly, for the veterans. I'm doing it for the homeless people that I see living under blue tarps in the state parks. I'm doing it for the environment and the beauty of our district that I want to preserve and keep for all the generations. So I'm doing it out of really love, I guess, to put it simply. And that's why I feel I'm a very good candidate for this. I have the experience, and I think that I have the training from working through people with all different walks of life for so many, many years. And I want to share that experience in Olympia. Thank you very much.
Dan, your turn.
Well, thank you, Mary. It is an honor to see you every year, or every 2 years. It's been a long time that we've been doing this forum, and thank you to the League for inviting us to talk about it. Like I said in the beginning, I'm a lifelong resident of the 35th District. I'm a professional firefighter, so problem solving is nothing new to me. I sponsored a bill in Olympia that would end the statute of limitations on sex crimes because Washington State should be among the several states that if you commit such a heinous crime, you have to worry about being prosecuted for that crime the rest of your natural life. I worked with Representative Tina Orwell to make sure that we established a really good database for doing DNA processing for those that have suffered from a sex crime. I want to coin the phrase that if we collect it, we test it, and it's not happening in Washington State. We're not doing the DNA testing. When we do that DNA testing, we identify serial rapists, and we can get them off the street. We can also close other crimes. My name is Dan Griffey, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you so much.
Well, now, thank you. Thank you to the candidates for their participation. Thank you to Thurston Community Media for producing this show. From Thurston Community Media and from the League of Women Voters, we encourage you to vote in the general election on November 8th. Vote, vote, vote. That's what you all need to do. Thank you.